Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good evening. We're so excited to see so many faces tonight. And the only promise we're gonna make tonight is that we're gonna put you to work. I hope you agree with that. Work with us, think with us, reflect with us, and hopefully we'll have a really rich conversation and discussion about our geography, what makes us similar, what makes us different, how do we go about those differences, or how do we rethink the boundaries that we have constructed for ourselves as a city. So we have a couple of activities for you. Who has not yet participated in the interactive map in a center? Raise your hand. Who has not? Okay, we're gonna put you to work, folks. There are 3 different markers. The 3 different markers, we're asking people 3 things. Very simple, right? Where do you live? Is the pink one. So you get to see, or we're starting to see where the folks from here tonight are from. And we have a lot of folks from the south side in the beautiful South Shore Cultural Center in the far south side of Chicago, which is beautiful. The second question we're asking is, where do you work? And that's a purple marker. The third question, and that is the one that usually throws people off a little bit, is where is the last destination or place that you have visited outside of your neighborhood? What makes you go out of your neighborhood and explore and learn about other places in the city, other than the South Shore Cultural Center tonight? So we have that activity. If you have not been part of it, please make your way to the center of the room and help us complete this interactive mapping process. It's really nice to see how our geography tends to gravitate towards certain areas, mostly on the north side. The second thing we want to ask you to do in the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes or so is look at these photographs. There are 2 stations next to the map. Each one of them are showcasing the photography work and documentation of folded map project that Tonika has been doing. There are 2 photographs. We will get into the details of it in a little bit, so we just want you to look at them and write some of your thoughts and observations. Cold reading, like we said in art school. So we're gonna give a couple of more minutes for that, and then we'll resume with a couple of presentation items.
So, you see how difficult it is to integrate a room based off your neighborhoods? That's the kind of work is required to integrate our city. You have to ask people where they live. You have to ask people, you have to invite them to your table. I know it seemed confusing, but the process is part of the whole experience. I believe if we can do it tonight in this room, our city can also do it. And so this is the beauty of art. You know, it seemed out of control and confusing, but what you all did to make it work is also part of the solution. You had to ask people questions. You had to find out something more about them. You didn't just look at them, you had to inquire. And all of those things are elements of what's necessary for us to integrate our city. This map here resembles our city, but as we can see, there's an abundance of representation from the north side. So we just want to be mindful of who is here and who is not at the table. That's also part of the experience tonight. But right now, I want to kind of walk you through how Folded Map was even created, started, the motivations behind it. This is my first time using a clicker, so I'm gonna start here. This is me, senior year at Lane Tech High School. This is where Folded Map began. I was living in Inglewood, 62nd and Loomis. I'm marked there on the map. And this was my daily commute to Lane Tech, which is on the far north side. I would go from Inglewood to Lane Tech, and I had to be at the bus stop every morning at 5:45 a.m. I was not alone. There's plenty of Southsiders, Westsiders, even Northsiders, students who make this commute to access a better education, right? So every day, 5:45 a.m., this was my commute. And I saw the gradient of change from my community to up north. And when you see that change every day, because what do you do when you ride a train? You look out the window, you might play your music. It was Walkmans back then in 1993. So I was listening to my little yellow Walkman, and I just looked out the window, and I literally saw the landscape change. But I also saw this. And you all have this map, this handout at your tables too, or I think at the registration. This is what Chicago's segregation looks like. Chicago is so segregated, I think we all intuitively know what the colors represent. Blue is black. Pink is white. Orange is Latino. Green is Asian. It's jarring, right? Our city is literally divided up this way. But what's so interesting is I don't think this map reflects how we want to interact. So once I would get to school, Lane Tech High School, I would go through the gradient of change of landscape. I would go through the segregation. I literally saw the red line train, as we all know, but in my case in the morning, go from black to white. And then when I got to school, I met all of these kids who were very similar to me, reflections of me, but from all over Chicago. From the north side, from the west side, from the south side, further south. These are neighborhoods that I had never heard of before, but I got to know these neighborhoods through my friends. And sometimes it's difficult for us to talk about race and use the word black, white, Latino, but it's important for us to do that if we're gonna have this discussion. This photo at the top is your left, top left. That's my friend Marilyn. She's Filipino. We took that picture because several people at Lane Tech told us we looked alike. And we were like, how does a black girl from Inglewood look like a Filipino girl from up north? These are the kinds of interactions we were having every day. We were getting to know neighborhoods of Chicago through each other. And at Lane Tech High School, I realized, okay, a lot of the black students who have my same lived experience, if they're not from the South Side, they're from Chicago's West Side. All of my friends who are first generation, are from immigrant families and are first generation, a lot of them live up north. And so I realized, wow, our city is divided in these unique ways, and I realized that through my friends. So as you can see, my commute really reflects how Chicago is mapped out racially. So it made such an impression on me that I began to see our city through addresses, through neighborhoods. We all ask people where they live, but to me, it just meant something different because this was literally what I saw every day. As you can see, this is 6720 North Ashland, 6720 South Ashland. This is an address pair I saw when I was in high school. It just took 20-something years to come out and be folded map, but this is what I saw. This is 6333 North Hermitage, 6327 South Hermitage. This is what I saw, and this is the difference. This is 6129 North Walcott, 6135 South Walcott. And some of these address pairs are at these tables. So I invite you throughout the night, you can definitely write your feelings, your emotions to this difference that you're recognizing. So through my community work, obviously this impression was made on me about the difference, the divide in Chicago. And so emerges folded map. I was like, I really want to bring this conversation forward. And so I already had the addresses that I knew were similar from high school, from being a young adult, but I wanted people to meet each other who lived on the same street, but different neighborhoods, much like you all are doing tonight. The difference is they didn't have the Chicago Humanities Festival, MPC, to help coordinate this. It was literally myself and these participants willing to be vulnerable and visit people that they've never met. So just like you all were confused on where to sit, just imagine how they felt. I had to tell them about the project, tell them what it was, then they had to come visit each other. So it was confusing, but it was worthwhile. I'm gonna play the video of North Hermitage resident John and Paula, and South Hermitage resident Maurice. I'm gonna play for you a clip of their first time ever meeting and them answering the question of what's missing in your neighborhood. I'm gonna cue Dan to play. When were the photos taken? The photos in the video? 2017.
I wouldn't mind seeing a theater, a bowling alley, maybe some type of center for the youth to kind of go hang out at, or have some things to do when they get out of school, or to be able to be exposed to different artistic options to just kind of give them something to do, aside kind of like hanging outside and finding different ways or getting into trouble. Or those trouble even being an option, because if you have nothing to do, of course, it's like there's trouble waiting right over there. So
yeah,
Those are some good suggestions.
yeah.
I don't know. Are we?
Yeah, a lot of our needs are met here. There's
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we could think of something, but yeah.
So that was just a minute of their hour-long meeting. So what I would like to invite you all to do to extend the impact of Folded Map is to have a conversation at your table, answering the same questions, some of the same questions that I asked my Folded Map participants. So I'm gonna give you about 10 minutes to start that dialogue. There's conversation cards at the table, and the questions are very simple. How did you come to live in your neighborhood? What do you miss most about the neighborhood that you're from? And I believe the other question, somebody has to remind me. It's my first time doing this. I'm a little nervous, so now I can't remember stuff. Is your current neighborhood your ideal neighborhood? I had to switch up the questions for you all because my Folded Map participants answered some very tough questions. I asked them what was missing from their neighborhood, is everything that they need on a day-to-day basis accessible in their neighborhood, and then the money question that really highlights inequity that I'm not making you all do tonight is how much did your house cost, or how much do you pay for rent? It's uncomfortable, but it reveals a lot. All of them answered that, but I'm not asking you all to do that. So I'm gonna give you all 10 minutes to just get to know each other. That's literally what it is. Getting to know each other, asking each other these questions, because how you enter a neighborhood and who you do that with really determines how you feel about a neighborhood. For you all who haven't visited Inglewood, some people have visited Inglewood through work, which is a very different experience if you visited me as your friend or come hang out with me and my friend Shelly that's over there. If you came to visit us, you would have a completely different experience. So I just want you all to take 10 minutes to just have this conversation with each other, and then we'll share out afterwards. All right, Paula, and I hate to interrupt. We hear a lot of good chatter, but we definitely want to invite you all to share a little bit.
Is that okay with you? We'd like to hear from you now. Can we get everyone's attention?
See how fun it is to get to know people? I know. So can I get everybody's attention? Show of hands. If you hear us, yes. Okay. So what is going to happen now? Paula and I are going to go to each side of the room, and we're basically just going to invite anyone from any table to just let us know if there was anything that surprised you that you learned, or just any thoughts you have. We're gonna have someone bring a microphone to you, or you can use mine. Oh.
Yes, just before you speak, please make sure that you're on mic so everybody can hear you.
I'm gonna just give you my mic.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, my name is Pamela, and I was the last one to speak at this table, and I almost didn't make it, but one thing that I really found interesting was that a lot of people at this table are not from Chicago. And I'm from New Jersey. I'm from the Jersey Shore. We got 2 girls here from Jersey. Not only that, I came to Chicago in 1985, and I think you came in 85, she came in 86, you came in 85. And I'm like, there were a lot of similarities here. And then the people who were here from Chicago, both from the same side of town, both, you know, a lot of similarities with the South Chicago people. So that was interesting.
Thank you. That's amazing. Wow. Would anybody else?
On this side.
Okay, oh, sorry.
My name is Hamima. One of the people in my neighborhood said that they're from Logan Square and that they are not pleased by the gentrification in their neighborhood. But from the way I see it, they're the gentrifier. So I was confused by that.
It's important to have these conversations so you can discover the confusing perspectives.
Hi, my name is Nikki, and we didn't begin to get through all of your questions, but
I'm so sorry.
Patterns evolved. A lot of people live where they live because transportation is important. A lot of people moved from the south side to the north side because the transportation was a lot better. People like living in diverse and interesting communities. That's a plus for the, not surprisingly, for the people in this room. And some people are very pleased that their neighborhoods have things like movies and theater, and other people wish that their neighborhoods had those things.
Thank you.
Anything that surprised you from what you heard? Anything surprised you?
People move a lot. People don't, I mean, I've lived only in a few places, but people have lived a lot of places. So.
My name is Gabriel, but I did the intro, so a lot of you probably heard my name. I think one thing that surprised me, well, it's not really surprising. I think there's like a generational thing going on because I think a lot of the a lot of the older people at my table, I think, lived somewhere for decades or more. And I think in my mind that kind of freaked me out because I was like, I've moved like 7 places in the past 3 years. So like to live somewhere for like decades is not something I'm familiar with. But I think everyone's been saying such heavy stuff, so I have to say something that's not so heavy. One thing that I live in Pilsen. One thing that attracted me to my community is food because I love Mexican food. And someone at my table lives in Lincoln Square, and she talked about food and restaurants. And I think like that's just one part of culture that is easy to bring people around because everyone loves to eat and everyone needs to eat. So.
And with you saying that, it's also important to recognize neighborhoods that do not have the opportunity to reflect their culture through those businesses.
But also one of the questions that we asked at the beginning is, what is the latest destination or place that you visited outside of your neighborhood? Many of them are restaurants.
Yes.
Like exploring through food, it's a very common practice in our discovery of geography. Who else wants to participate?
Hi, my name's Dana, and I'm a North Sider, and kind of going on the same theme of food. One of the things I found interesting that the folks from the South Side shared with me is the lack of food access. I don't think that was surprising to me, but it was just reiterated to me in the fact that not having access to a grocery store that they can easily walk to, whereas those of us on the north side could probably walk to multiple grocery stores. So not even looking at the restaurants and the kind of like evenings out, but the day-to-day access to food.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
From that side?
Oh, this side and then out. Is it a mic over there? Okay, I'm gonna run. Who wanted to say something over here? Nobody? Okay, well, we'll go back to you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Rashid. I'd just like to dovetail on what she said about food stores. We live in a community with well-heeled people, well-thought-about people. But next month, it will be 5 years since we had a grocery store. Dominic's left, and we have not had a grocery store that we could walk to or even drive to for convenience. And that's a stark contrast that I thought I would like to point out.
That side of the room, we need you to speak.
They're listening really good.
Now to dovetail on the gentleman, I lived in this neighborhood for 25 years when Dominic's and Jules was here. I went to high school in this neighborhood, so things have changed, but we at our table talked about a lot of the myths that aren't true about what's happening on the south side versus other parts of the city. So, but anybody who's grown up in this city will know that you can go to one block and it'll look one way, and you go to another block and it's a total different experience.
Okay, I'm going to represent this side of the room. I'm Dee Dee. What surprised me about our table was that at least 2 or maybe 3 of the people sort of randomly ended up in the neighborhoods that they were in. And as an older person, you know, I've planned more or been, you know, in one place for 20 years. So the idea that, you know, you need an apartment right away and you move to where the apartment is, and now you're there. So I found that interesting.
What surprised me was a person at our table asked me a question. I live in Ravenswood, Andersonville, and she said, well, that's pretty much a perfect neighborhood, and it is. But my family and all my friends live south, like far south. And she said, if I could, if I moved north by marriage, and she said, if I could, would I live on the south side? And I was surprised, and I said I would, because I missed that community and a good sweet potato pie.
Could you say your name?
What's your name? Belinda? Yeah, I think what she said is perfect transition into this next video I want to show you all, but Belinda said that she would move to the South Side because she misses the community. So that's important. The word community, how we define it, and how other communities aren't allowed to define it. So I just want to share with you all in closing.
My name is James Gilliam, grew up on the south side of the city of Chicago, lifelong Chathamite, if you will. And as we're talking, especially your video moving from Inglewood to Lane Tech, for those of you that may not know, back in the 60s, the south side had all of these things that we're wishing that would come back. Indoor skating rinks, movie theaters, multiple movie theaters that you could walk to in your community, the Rhodes, the Avalon. Movie theaters just like downtown Chicago. The South Side had them all. And places to go and things to do. It probably could be multiple books written on why they don't exist today. Quite frankly, if you really know the history, the building that we're sitting in at one point was ready to be torn down. And they had to fight to keep it open. So there are a lot of resources in every community, from Inglewood to Chatham, you name it, that had resources, movie theaters, restaurants, shopping, and many reasons why some of that dried up. Everyone has an opinion, possibly segregation, possibly integration, that it doesn't exist today. So it'll be nice to see some of those things come back. I grew up going to skating rinks and going to the movie theaters on Sunday where I could walk to those theaters. And the last thing I'll say is, and this is a slap at, I love my media, but this is a slap at the media, and it's not fake news. I hate to even talk about that because 45 likes to talk about that. But the media will address crime in a particular community, and I wish they would just call the address out, but they label it a particular community. For instance, this is a pet peeve of mine. I grew up in Chatham, and if you know the history of Chatham, just do a little research on it, see who grew up there, see what businesses were there, see what owners of businesses were there, see who currently live there today. And every time a crime occurs, for convenience, they will say Chatham. It could happen in 92nd Cottage Grove, Chatham. That's not Chatham. There's a community called Chatham and Avalon. Chatham kind of stops at Cottage Grove, Avalon picks up. Everything is labeled, and they're doing it throughout the city for whatever the reasons are, ignorance or whatever, and it kills possible growth in a particular community when you label everything happening in that particular community when it's outside of the community, possibly the same thing in Inglewood. Yeah. You know, as close you get to Inglewood, everything is Inglewood, where it possibly may not be. So, sorry for my soap.
No, that's okay. These conversations are necessary. I appreciate you sharing that because it's not a lot of times we get to share that to a group that is of this makeup. So it's important to say. And then also, Inglewood is over 6 square miles. It's a huge neighborhood, Inglewood and West Inglewood together. So identifying the addresses will be helpful. So in closing, I'm just going to cue to play this. This is a map twin, my first map twin, them talking about how it felt to...
I think that, it felt like they were genuine and sincere. It felt like that they heard me. They can hear what I'm saying. They understand what I'm talking about. They saw where I lived. And it wasn't about It wasn't about that you feel sorry for me or anything. It's about, I understand that it's a situation or let me rephrase. I felt like they understood that because, like I said earlier, because you live in Inglewood, it doesn't mean that you don't want some of the same things that they want or they have or the amenities that they have. And I think that they understood that. That's what it felt like to me. So.
Yeah, I hope that that's right. That's kind of you to say. But yeah, absolutely. It brought home to me that the things I've already heard and read about, but on a much more personal level about the inequity in the way these neighborhoods are invested in and maintained and what have you. It's clearly an inequity, and from my perspective, you can't help but feel honestly a little bit of guilt about that. But I think more importantly, there's an imperative for those who feel like me, and I would imagine most of the city of Chicago does. We certainly all, or so many of us call ourselves progressives, right? That we act accordingly, and that we hold our leadership accountable and vote responsibly and vote for fair government with integrity and transparency.
Anything to add to? Well, I remember listening when you were being interviewed, because the two of you are the twins. And yeah, it was one of those moments where you guys I was in the corner of your house, and I was listening too, and I just heard you guys starting to talk, and it was just, yeah, it's a nice memory, actually. And then the other memory I have, just the next little bit, was being in the back where you were showing me where you're making your purses and your bags.
Yes.
That one was really cool.
Well, my memory, not only just seeing you all talk for that first time, but also Nanette walking us over to her garden, her vacant lot, and you, Nanette, and Jennifer really talking, and so that stood out to me because I was like, wow. They came all the way from Edgewater and walking down 61st in Bishop. Inglewood. And this is interesting, and it was so cute, and I loved it. They've known each other for over a year now. And Jennifer and Wade, the Northside resident, and Nanette, the Inglewood resident, the Black woman Nanette. That was Wade and Jennifer's first time ever coming to Inglewood. And so they got to visit Nanette, go to her garden, see that she makes purses. She's a seamstress. And so now that is what they know of Inglewood. And so I just want to leave you all kind of with a call to action because of what the media does. It scares people, it works off fear, and then also just lies. To get to know people from different neighborhoods and visit them, visit them. I remember a job that I had, a lot of us were the same age, this was in my 20s, but we didn't visit each other. The job was up north, and after work, we just didn't visit each other. And if we did, it definitely wasn't people coming to visit me on the South Side. So I would just encourage you all to explore getting to know each other, specifically North Siders coming to the South Side, getting to know someone from the South Side. So I want to offer any last comments from anyone before we close up. If you would like to share any other reflections, thoughts, observations you have before we wrap up.
Thank you. It just struck me that in everyone's case, in everyone's situation, they're seeking a neighborhood that meets their needs, however that's defined. And in examining their life, what is missing is what they need. And everyone can relate to disappointment in having needs lost because of changes, but everyone can experience the thrill of a life in which their needs are met. So I think in balance, everyone chooses to live and stay where most of their needs are met most of the time, and that's about all that life is.
Thank you. Did you have any closing remarks, Paula, before we hand it over?
Just the invitation. This conversation doesn't end up here. I feel what we would like to leave you all with is this idea of asking questions. And a lot of our practices, Tonika's artistic, photographic, journalistic, activism practice, she wears many hats. Not literally, of course, with that beautiful hair. Use whatever place you are at to ask questions. And I think that's what we're trying to do through these exercises, like not taking for granted the status quo. The way that the city is right now, the way that we are separated, segregated, doesn't mean it has to be that way. And we believe in change. So this is one of many exercises. We want to prompt you to have the same conversation with what you learned today. And we are invested in creating the tools and the materials and the visuals to prompt more of these discussions, because it's needed and it's important. And we all have a role, and we all have a very important part in making change happen.
Yeah. And I know it seems, because it is systemic, and it seems too large for us to tackle, but these are the ways in which we can tackle it individually through relationships. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over.
I'd like to thank Tonika and Paola for this presentation.